All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Esther Vimo, and I work in the alumni office at Swarthmore College. And I'm so excited to be here with you again tonight and to have Theresa join us for another baking workshop. We decided to join you from our kitchen today, and my daughter is actually joining us as well. So we'll be baking along. Before we get started, just a few suggestions. If you have any questions during the workshop, you can chat your question or put your question in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. If you're having trouble with the audio and cannot hear us very well, go to the bottom left of your screen and click on the audio settings, and you'll see that you can change the input and the output levels of your audio there. And then a little promo for some other events that are coming up. You can see all the remaining events through June 12th on our website, swarthmore.edu/reunion-2021. And our next two events after this are the alumni lecture and a quizzo for all alumni. So check out that webpage though, because we have many more events coming up. But for tonight, we're here to bake. So let me pass this on to Therese Ton, class of 2019, joining us for a baking workshop.
Thanks for the intro, Esther. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. I know it's beautiful outside, so I decided to take the kitchen outdoors today. And today we'll be making my brown butter chocolate chip cookies. So yeah, let's get started and I'll just tell you more about the recipe as we go. Actually, let's do an inventory, make sure everyone has everything first. So what we're gonna do first is mix in all our dry ingredients. We're gonna go with, if everyone has your recipe, 1.5 cups of flour. And remember when you, my 1 cup doesn't fit in, so I'll do half cup. Whenever you are measuring your flour, any dry ingredients, you want to level off the top. This is actually really important to be able to get accurate measurements. And because we're making cookies, we actually don't need, we actually don't need to sift the flour, because when you're looking at a cake, you really want a tender, fluffy interior, but with cookies, you want that chewiness, so you don't necessarily need to sift out all the flour or the dry ingredients. So you got our flour. And we're gonna add in our 1 teaspoon of baking soda. This is one of my favorite chocolate chip recipes to make because the brown butter gives it a whole new level of flavor. Brown butter in France is called beurre noisette, and it translates to hazelnut butter because it's so nutty and fragrant, and I think it gives that little extra, what am I tasting when I'm eating these brown butter chocolate chip cookies, and they freeze and refrigerate really well. After you add your flour and your baking soda, you're going to add your 1.25 teaspoon of sea salt. This might seem like a lot, but because this you're already having brown butter, it's almost slightly savory. Adding in a little bit more salt is actually going to really amp up the complexity of this cookie. So you got your 1 teaspoon and a fourth of teaspoon. And I specify kosher salt because the types of salt will actually, there are different types of salts, and each type of salt has a different size of the granules. So kosher salt, I don't know if you're able to see it. It's a little, if the grains are actually bigger than table salt or the Morton salt that you get in like the round cylinder. And Morton salt is a lot tinier, so there's more crystals packed in a teaspoon. So if you actually use a 1/4 teaspoon of Morton's ionized salt, it will be saltier than if you used kosher salt because the granules are bigger. And same thing if you used even bigger salt than that, that would be like flaky salt. Sea salt is in the middle between ionized salt and kosher salt. So please remember, if you're using any different types of salt kind of tone it up or tone it back accordingly to the size of your granules. So after you have these, let's see if I'm missing anything else. Yeah, so flour, baking soda, and your salt, you can mix it up. And a quick mix will be just fine. And you can set that aside. So we're gonna go talk about the star ingredient of this recipe, which is gonna be your brown butter. So before I kind of tell you what brown butter really is, I should tell you what actually makes up butter. So butter is 80% fat, around 15% water, and 1 to 2% protein. And there are two types of protein that are in butter. There's whey protein and there's a protein called casein. And what we're gonna do is we're going to melt the butter we're gonna melt the butter until the proteins in the butter undergo something called a Maillard reaction. And that's when proteins interact with reducing sugars under the conditions of heat. And it allows a bunch of different like organic flavors to flavonoids, I believe that's what they're called, to occur. And it gives a lot of different complex flavors. It's the same reaction what happens when you marinate your meats in any kind of sugars like honey. You know, you have honey or balsamic vinegar when you marinate chicken or steak. And when you grill it, you get that really nice, like flavorful, like brown crust when you sear it. That's the same thing that we're gonna do today, but in butter. And it gives you a very nutty, fragrant butter that is often used even in pastas, in sauces. So we're gonna go melt this butter. So you're gonna follow me in the kitchen. All right, everyone. So you're gonna put your stove onto, I would say low, like around low heat. You don't want the butter to burn. It will not taste good. So you want, I believe, 3/4 of a cup. And it doesn't matter if your butter is room temp or cold for this, because you're going to melt it anyways. And put it in there.
Therese, we have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you microwave the butter rather than using the stovetop?
So microwaving the butter, you can to melt it. And then once it's melted, I would say microwave it in 15-second intervals, and then as it gets progressively darker in color, shorten the intervals, because you really don't want your butter to burn. And I will show you also what you're looking for when you're microwaving it is you're getting these brown speckles at the bottom of the bowl of your melted butter, and that's the proteins, the whey and the casein in the butter undergoing that Maillard reaction. So yes, but I would say be very careful. You don't want to set off smoke alarms. I did that earlier today and it was not fun.
We had another question about, so it's a couple people were mentioning, it looks like 3/4 of a stick of butter. Is this, wait, what is the question? Is it the same? Is 3/4 a cup a stick and a half?
3/4 of a cup.
I know. I need to look at it.
Let me actually look at my recipe, make sure too.
Yeah, I need to look at a stick.
3/4 of a cup of butter. And you know what? You were so right. I was 3/4 of a cup I did 3/4 of a stick. So thank you for someone out there for catching that for me. Yes, because 1 stick is a 1/2 cup, so it is a stick and a half. Yeah.
Thanks for clarification.
Yes, thanks for catching it, whoever did. My cookies would have turned out very weird and I would have been wondering what was going on. That's because I was adding half the amount of butter. If there are any chemistry or bio folks out there who are watching right now, to really get down to the nitty gritty, the Maillard reaction is when the, I wrote it down, the carboxyl group of the sugar interacts with the nucleophilic amino group in the protein, which is in our case, the whey and casein, and undergo a chemical reaction. It's not enzymatic, so there are no enzymes in there that are functioning. And I forgot to mention, besides fat, water, and protein in butter, there's also a tiny bit of sugar, and that's actually called lactose. So when people are lactose intolerant, they can't break down the sugar in milk, which is lactose. And lactose is also the source of the reducing sugar that interacts with the amino group in the protein. So if any chemistry there.
We've had someone ask if you're using unsalted butter, which I'm guessing the answer is yes, because you're mentioning,
Yes.
you know, each of these ingredients. Yes.
Yeah, so unsalted butter, and that's only because we want to control the level of salt in our cookies. We added quite a bit. We added a teaspoon and a quarter teaspoon. But if you do use salted butter, I would say reduce your sugar down by 3/4 of a teaspoon versus the original recipe. So yeah, you can use salted, just reduce the amount of salt that would be in the recipe. So let's check on our butter. So butter is getting melted. There are two main, I would say there are two main stages to when butter is melted. The first stage is when just the butter is melted and everything is liquid, and you can see these white solids on top. And I'll show it to you right now. So these white solids, not the hunk of butter in the middle. So those white solids on top are the milk solids or the milk proteins. And as you're melting it, water is evaporating. So at one point, when you continue heating the butter, most of the water would be evaporated and you're left with fat and your milk proteins, casein and whey. And when you continue heating it up, your casein and whey will slowly turn brown. And that's when you'll start smelling it to be, it'll start smelling really sweet and nutty and yeah, really yummy. And that's why you also, when you like sear meat, it just like, there's that smell of like protein, like being on the high heat that just smells so freaking good. So we'll slowly get there.
So someone's asked, what's the difference between making brown butter and clarifying butter?
Yes, that is a great question. So clarified butter is when you melt your heat and you skim off all of this milk fat. So clarified, that's why some people say well, it is, when people say that clarified butter is healthier, is because, ooh, there's steam coming up here, is because you melt the butter and you skim off all this, these milk proteins, so that the clarified butter has a higher smoke point. So like you can use it more for higher cooking temperature, versus if you use regular butter, it can burn easily. And then brown butter compared to clarified butter is that brown butter still has protein in it, and that protein is cooked to a point where it has that Maillard reaction and gets brown. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but to summarize, clarified butter has no milk solids in it, or milk proteins, and brown butter does have those proteins, and those proteins are cooked to a point where they get brown and nutty. Hope that answers your question.
No, thanks. That's great.
Awesome. So we're seeing it bubble more. This is when it gets heated. Oh, and also for anyone who hasn't done this yet, because I just forgot to do it, remember to preheat your oven, because I just remembered to do that. And you're preheating it to 375. All right.
While you're browning, I have a question about your bakery business.
Sure.
Are you still able to do all that with everything else that's going on?
Yeah, so I just went through beginning of May, I moved jobs and I also moved to Rhode Island. So that has been kind of the biggest kind of transition point in my life at the moment. And I haven't been getting many orders since moving here, but I'm hoping that I actually can move towards a different business model for my baking business, where I'd love to do more e-commerce, where I'm shipping cookie tins and still doing cakes, but more making that as like local orders and not as a main part of the revenue that comes in. And I am in the works of hopefully starting a YouTube channel and doing TikToks and Reels where I have a more social media presence on it.
Perfect.
So I'm still
Great.
doing it, but it's gonna look different than what it did before.
Okay, well, keep us up to date, and we'll make sure we'll send out some links with this so people can see where you are.
Yes, thank you. All right. So let's get in there. And I just amped up the heat, and you actually can notice while you're watching your butter, when everyone at home, the butter will actually sound, the bubbles will sound a lot different too. The bubbles will be, it will sound, I would say, describing it, it will sound almost thicker, and the bubbles will slow because there's not as much water evaporating anymore. And at this point, you'll start to smell, things will start to smell a little fragrant. And you want to keep moving the butter. Mine is starting to smell quite nutty. If you have a wooden spoon handy, remember to keep stirring it, because often brown bits will be stuck to the end. And I don't know if you can see it because there's a lot of foam. Take it off the heat for a bit. But there is brown bits at the bottom right now. I'm going to still keep going because I want it to go a little further. But it'll start to smell really, almost smells like a little bit like toffee. And maybe even caramel, but I'm starting to be happy with this. It's always a precarious line between getting as much browning as I can and getting it burnt. So I think I'm gonna take it off now, and we'll bring this outside, and I'll pour it into a white bowl like this, where hopefully you can see the brown bits. So let's go outside. So I'm pouring it out. Remember to scraping the bottom. And hopefully you can see those brown bits. So that's how brown my butter turned.
So Therese, we have another question. Someone said
Yeah.
their butter is bubbling but not getting foamy. It's in
Oh, that's
skillet.
okay.
Should they keep going?
Yeah, keep going. So what you're looking for, it's okay if it's not foamy. You're more looking at the color, these little tiny brown speckles at the bottom of the pan that you should be getting. And smell too. So I think smell is a really good indicator as well. Once it starts smelling caramelly, toffee like, really nutty like.
Right.
And I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some sugar in my recipe. So
And so, Therese, I think that, paying attention to the smell might also be the answer to the next question. How do you know it's not burned?
oh, okay. So as I would say, when you start smelling the caramelly notes, if you're not used to making brown butter, I would say take it off just to be careful, because if you go too far, it goes quick to burn. Because the other thing is the butter will continue browning even when it's left the pan, because the residual heat will actually continue accelerating the reaction. So if you haven't made brown butter before and you are not sure where to stop, I would say once you get that smell, you can take it off the pan.
Okay, great. And then I have one more question. Is there a specific reason why we're using a wooden spoon?
For the pot I was using, it was a nonstick pot, and you don't want to use metal on nonstick in the case that, because metal is a lot harder, it can often chip the bottom of a nonstick pan, because nonstick is a metal pot that has a nonstick coating that's usually quite thin, and it could chip if you stir it hard enough and over years of wear and tear. The nonstick coating can chip off, and it's usually poisonous or just not good for your body. So I used a wooden pot for a nonstick pan. But if you're using, I don't know if anyone's using like a cast iron or something, then you can use other stuff. But I used a wooden pan just because I want to keep my bowl safe, or my pot safe.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so you have your brown butter. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna add your sugars to it. And I will add my white sugar first, which is a 1/4 cup. Finding my 1/4 cup. And you will add your brown sugar. And the reason why we're using both brown sugar and white sugar is because white sugar will give you a little structure, and brown sugar, actually both sugars give you structure. I guess it's more of a taste, because brown sugar contains molasses in it, and it gives it plays along with kind of that really like warm flavors of this cookie, and it makes the cookie chewier because of the molasses as well. So you're gonna need a cup of packed dark brown sugar, please.
All right, while everyone gets their sugar, I have another question for you, Therese. We have a really
what's up?
crowd tonight, so that's great. Someone would like to bake with, this is Mary, she would like to bake with kids and is wondering if she can prepare the brown butter ahead, or does it need to be hot for the recipe?
It does not need to be hot. You definitely can prepare it ahead of time and then keep it in the fridge, and then bring it to room temp when you are making your cookies, and then just stirring in the sugar and butter. And like most recipes with cookies, you can cream the butter and sugar together first. That actually might even give you a better flavor, like texture of the cookie. I haven't tried that method out yet, but I hope that answers your question. The brown sugar is a little hard in mine, so I'm trying to get it out. Packed cup. And now you are going to mix these up. If you're at home using if you have a stand mixer or hand mixer, this is a time where you could definitely whip it up. I wanted to not do a lot of dishes tonight, so I just used a whisk. And after this, you will be adding your 2 egg yolks and your egg. This thing is stuck together. I'm eating these cookies, so that's why I'm sticking my fingers in them. There you go.
Therese, why are we using dark versus light brown sugar?
So the difference between dark and light brown sugar is just the amount of molasses that's in them. Dark brown sugar has the most level, the highest amount of molasses in it. So it is just a matter of taste and a little bit of texture. So dark brown sugar will give you a little bit chewier cookie than light brown, but the difference is minimal. So if you have light brown sugar, go ahead and use it. All right, so I have my sugar and butter mixed in over here. And now I'm gonna add my eggs. So I have already 2 egg yolks in here. I'm gonna add in. And the reason why we're using egg yolks in addition to the egg, so the full egg has both the egg yolk and the egg white. Egg yolks are mostly fats. Egg whites are mostly water, but it contains proteins in it. So that's why athletes are always like, egg white omelets, protein, go big or go home. And you want that protein to be able to give some kind of structure to your cookie, but you're adding 2 egg yolks because you want that richness, and the cookie will be very luxurious tasting. So adding in my egg yolks. And then adding my 1 egg. And as you can see, if you notice, once you add your full egg in, it will be a lot thicker. And part of it is because of those egg whites in the full egg. And once that's all mixed, you're gonna add your 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract.
Hey, Therese, me with another question.
Yeah, of course.
If folks wanted to use silicone tools instead of wooden ones, would that work?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that should definitely work. Especially if your silicone is like high heat resistance, that would be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. So at this point, all that's left is to mix in your dry into your wet. And at this point, I really urge folks not to use a whisk because that will overmix your cookie dough. And one thing about making cookies or making cakes is often you don't want things that are tough and dense. You usually want things that are either chewy or fluffy. And when you overmix any kind of dessert mixture, it's often because you're creating too much gluten. And gluten is a protein complex. So in flour, there are 2 proteins, glutenin and gliadin. And gluten and gliadin, when there's water present, they bind together and they form gluten. So you don't form gluten when you mix it up, like if you overmix dry flour, but if you add any kind of wet ingredients into your flour, you will create gluten. And gluten is something that you don't want in cookies or cakes, but you do want in like breads. If you think of things that contain a lot of gluten in breads, when people are talking, when you knead the dough a lot, is you're creating a lot of gluten structures. And like bagels, sourdough, that's something that you want, that is like really dense and chewy. But for cookies and cakes, you don't really want that. So try not to overmix. You want to get to the point, you want to stop just at the point where it's 95% mix. It's okay if there's tiny dry like flour spots in. So I add in half of my dry ingredients, and I will fold this until it's mostly combined, and I'll add the other. Then we'll add our chocolate chips and then put them in the oven. You can also use a wooden spoon in this step as well. So as you can see, I'm getting close. And definitely at one point before you bake, you should just definitely smell your dough. It will smell so good. It will smell like toffee, or at least mine does. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that's mixed, if you can see. So there's some dry spots, but that's okay because we'll do a few more rounds of mixing once we add in our chocolate chips. So you can add however many chocolate chips to your heart's desire. I say 6 ounces, which is about 3/4 of a cup, but in reality, I'm probably gonna add a full cup of chocolate chips to this because I really like my chocolate chips very chocolatey. But adjust to your preferences, and I'm using semi-sweet, but you guys can also use whatever type of chocolate chip your heart desires. You can also chop up some chocolate bars if you don't have chocolate chips. And depending on how big you chop your chocolate bar, it will result in how big pools of chocolate you want. So if you really get big chunks, you can get really huge pools of chocolate in your chocolate chip cookie, which is, I think, really fun. But yeah, like I said, up to you. Okay, so we have finished making our chocolate chip cookie dough, and it looks a little wet right now, but it's okay. You can let it rest for a few minutes if it's still really tacky. The longer you let it rest, more of the melted butter will solidify, and the dough will get more like cookie dough that you get at the refrigerated section in a grocery. I'm pretty happy with where mine is at right now, so I'm just gonna continue on and scooping it out, portioning it out into the chocolate chip cookies. And these cookies only take 9 minutes to bake. So this is such a good recipe to have when, if you have kids or like have a lot of friends over. I always have a batch of this in my freezer, like pre-portioned out cookie dough balls. And it's very handy for midnight snacks too. So I did about 3 tablespoons, I said. So this ice cream scoop that I have is around 3 tablespoons, but you can make your cookie as big or as small as you want it. And also the thing with now learning about brown butter is that you can use brown butter in and replacing and experimenting and replacing it with any other recipe that calls for butter. Try replacing it with brown butter and see whether or not you guys like what it tastes. And one special thing, I'm gonna be right back. I should have added this to the recipe as well, but if you guys don't have this, it's okay. I have flaky sea salt here, which is salt that has it's really large crystals of salt. And I like to sprinkle it on my cookie right before baking it. And this just makes things, it's really tasty. It's kind of, because the brown butter has a lot of notes that are very similar to caramel. If you guys ever have desserts that are sea salt caramel, this is kind of playing off of that. If you guys don't have flaky salt, it's okay. You can use kosher salt or sea salt, whatever salt you guys have, and just sprinkle a little bit on top. That way, when it bakes, the salt crystals kind of sink in on the top and it's baked with it. And it's so tasty when you bite in and those little bits of salt are in. Okay. So I'm actually gonna put this tray right here in the fridge, just so that it can firm up for a little bit, depending on how cooled off your dough is and how thick it is. You can bake it off right away, but if not, stick it in the fridge or the freezer for maybe a few minutes. And then I'll come back to portion out the rest of my dough. I love summer. It's late out. It's what, 8 p.m., 8:15, and it's still really nice out.
Therese, while you're scooping up those portions, I have a few more questions for you.
Yes.
Let's see, where did we leave off? Yes, we can freeze the dough. You mentioned that. Okay, the cookie sheet, do we not need to grease it?
Oh, you guys don't need to grease the cookie sheet because there is so much butter in this recipe already that it will be it will release from your pan quite easily. It would be hard for me to believe that they stick unless you have a really old baking sheet that has a lot of grooves in it. But if you have a regular baking sheet, you should be fine.
All right, and can you tell us what size ice cream scoop are you using?
Oh, okay. So the weird thing about ice cream scoopers is depending on what manufacturer they are from, they'll have different numbers, which then relate to different sizes. So there's no standardized way of knowing what kind of cookie scoop it is. But mine is approximately around 3 tablespoons. There isn't any logo on this, unfortunately, so I can't tell you, but another way to portion it out is by hand using a golf ball.
Okay, great.
All right. Oh, add some salt to this.
All right, while you do that, another question. Someone had their chocolate chips melting and making streaks in the dough. Should
no.
butter cool first?
Yes, I should have, I'm sorry, I should have actually told for people who are doing this. My butter was cooling, my dough was quite cool already before I added my chocolate chips. So I'm sorry that your chocolate chips melted into your dough. That's something that I should have specified when I was making it. So now you unfortunately will not have chocolate chip cookies, but you will have brown butter chocolate cookies. You can make into a swirl. I hope you're flexible enough to be able to still have a tasty dessert. It will be just as tasty, just not as what you first expected it to be.
It still sounds delicious, so.
So let's bring this to the kitchen. But yeah, I think part of it is because I was baking outside, so it was quite cooler out. So it cooled down my dough a lot quicker. So I'm taking these out from my freezer. And we will bake them for 9 minutes. Depending on, that's another thing is I think with recipes, sometimes it's better to have visual and touch or smelling cues versus actual minutes, because depending on humidity, even altitude, temperature, things will be different from when the recipe was like developed or tested. So what you're looking for, I guess, also when you cook before you bake your cookies, you definitely don't want your dough to still be really loose. And what I mean loose is it doesn't hold its shape. So if I'm touching this dough, you can see that it's quite firm. It's almost the consistency of Play-Doh. So that's what you're looking for in terms of how firm you want your cookie dough to be when you bake it. Because if it's anything more loose than Play-Doh, you will get cookies your cookies will run. It will just be one big fat kazuki. Just to remember temperature so that anyone out there won't get big, just big runny cookies at the end. And we'll let that freeze in there.
Good, Therese. I have more questions for you.
Sure.
Deborah is asking about insulated baking sheets. Do you use those? Can we use those for these cookies?
Insulated. I actually don't know what an insulated cookie sheet is. If you can tell me in the chat what they look like or what they're made out of, maybe I can help you out more.
All right, great. Deborah, go ahead and type in the chat if you have a chance. And then Amanda has a question. Let's see, her oven can do convection or regular bake. Which one should she use?
Okay. So the difference between convection and regular is convection actually has fans in them. So it circulates heat very well, so that usually when you're doing like roasts or baking bread, it's very good because you'll get a very even heat. I would say I've only tested this recipe out in a regular oven. I don't know what it would be like in a convection oven. I would guess that the convection would take a little bit quicker because the heat is so even. So maybe check on it in 6 minutes if you want to use convection and try it out. And what you're looking for in terms of texture, how done the cookie is you definitely don't want to take it out when it looks done in the oven, because by the time it cools, it will be a crispy cookie. If that's what you want, go for it. But if you want kind of the picturesque, chewy on the outside, but gooey in the middle, I would say think of taking it out when it still looks slightly not done, because it's always better to take it a little bit underdone, and if you don't like it, then add another minute back into the oven, than to have a cookie that's overdone because you can't go backwards and fix it.
Got it. And in the meantime, Deborah mentioned the insulated baking sheets. They have an air pocket between two sheets of metal.
Wow, I actually never knew those existed. I would assume that that will make a very even bake because air is a great insulator for heat. I would say you should totally try it out. And I think it would be just fine using the same bake time of 9 minutes. But yeah, please tell me how they come out. I think you should go ahead and use it. I don't see why you can't use it.
Great, thank you.
Sure. All right, so we're 4 minutes away from delicious cookies. I unfortunately ran out of milk, so I'm really sad that I can't have milk and cookies. But this would be a great time for you to pour a glass of milk. Whether it's oat milk or almond milk, some kind of dairy, some kind of a creamy beverage would be really tasty right now. So I have ice cream, but that's not the same thing.
Therese, while we're waiting for the cookies, maybe we can do a little more story time. Do you have any any recipes that you tried that, you know, didn't work out the way you thought or hoped and maybe turned into something else?
Yeah, sure. Let me think about this. So there's actually one time, it actually refers to chocolate chip cookies too. One time I was trying out a recipe where it called for melted butter, room temperature butter. And I was too impatient and I just microwaved the butter and it turned into melted butter. And I just said, screw it. All right, I'll just throw it into the mix, and kind of same process, creaming the butter, sugar, adding your flour, chocolate chips. And one very interesting that happened was all of my cookies turned out really large and super flat, like very, very flat. And I was at this point testing it out to see if I could use this recipe for a farmer's market. So I brought it into work and I was, getting feedback from everyone. And I was like, screw this. And this doesn't look really good. So I just brought it in. But apparently everyone in my work really liked the flat cookies because the texture was really interesting, where it was really flat, but still chewy. It wasn't crispy. And I haven't actually repeated that recipe then, but that's one time I remember where I pretty much screwed up, but it turned out pretty good. And I'll actually have to retry to make that type of chocolate chip cookie again, where I get flat, chewy chocolate chip cookies.
That sounds like a fun adventure.
Yeah.
The other thing, Therese, that I'd love to hear about is, you're very entrepreneurial. You have your own bakery, Tosca Bakery, and now you're looking into, TikTok. And I think you mentioned the
YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yes. So, do you have any lessons learned or any advice for others who want to start their own business?
Yeah, I would say in the past year and a half, I have been on a journey to understand personal finance a lot and also how to manage money. Because admittedly, when I was first running Tosca, I was doing the thing. I was making a lot of baked goods. I was selling a lot of baked goods, but on the back end of how the financial health of Tosca was completely unknown. It was very unorganized, and I don't think I knew exactly what I was doing. I kind of had an idea of what my margins were, but I didn't have a system for bookkeeping. I didn't have a system to understand how much money I was making every month, because I kind of was just doing it by the fly, where I would get a lot of money and I was like, okay, I have more money to use up for more of the business. And in the past, I would say since graduating SWAT, I have been on a journey to understand a lot more about how to manage money. And there's a great saying I learned from some of the financial gurus that I've listened to on YouTube, where what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. And so now it's the flip side of everything I measure gets managed. So I'm really into understanding how really invested in understanding how how financial health is doing. So lessons learned. Yeah, learn how to actually invest in learning how to manage your own money, because it will really translate with how your business will succeed and how well it will do.
That's a great tip. Thank you. Do we have cookies?
We have cookies. So this is what I mean, where it looks like it's not done, but it will continue baking even as it's on the tray. So I'll give this a minute or two to cool. And actually, I'll be right back. I have a tool to use. This is a really cool trick that I learned from a baker on Instagram, is if you have any round cutters that fit, you can scoot your cookie in so that it will be more round. It will look more picturesque. I actually don't have, this round doesn't fit it all the way, but it can scoot it. It will look really nice. And the other thing that you can do for making it just look really nice is cookies. Sometimes you in Nestle Toll House cookies, they'll have these little ridges on the insides, and you can get that while it's cooling. Is you drop the pan, and this will pop all the air bubbles that are in the cookie and give you a really nice look. So if you can see with these guys here, like the crinkles that were not there before, but now they are. And just give a few taps. I'm gonna put my other sheet in. But yeah, Lucky is cool. I can't wait for a minute to give this a taste, and let me get a little plate.
Oh, I think ours are gonna. All right. Therese, I have more questions for you.
Yes, of course.
Do you know any other recipes that taste good with the brown butter?
I have so many recipes that would taste good with the brown butter. You can even go a savory route with this, but I'll start first with the baking, because that's what you guys asked. You can even just try sugar cookies with brown butter. I would think they would taste so good. I also think anything with nuts, like an oatmeal raisin cookie, would be really tasty with a brown butter. Carrot cake would be really tasty with a brown butter. I know carrot cake usually doesn't have butter in it, but if you replace vegetable oil with brown butter, or frostings, I think frostings would be really tasty with the brown butter. If you did maybe replaced half of the butter with brown butter and the other half just like regular softened butter, and you make an American buttercream, which is just butter, powdered sugar, and a little bit of milk, would be really tasty. Crepes with brown butter would be really good as well. I don't see in any scenario where replacing a baking recipe that has butter in it and replacing it with brown butter would not be a good idea. I think you can try it out. And the savory option is brown butter is really good in pasta, really, really good in pasta. And usually fall pastas are really good, like butternut squash, brown butter. You often, when you go to Italian restaurants, if you get butternut squash ravioli, they'll serve it with brown butter and fried sage in it. Probably very good with fish too, and meat. Just brown butter, you could use it anywhere. I don't think you'll be disappointed. But as you can see, these look pretty good to me. And bake accordingly how much you want how chewy or how soft you want your chocolate chip cookies to be. I like mine a little bit on the gooey side, so add another minute or two if you want them a little bit more brown. I think it also depends on your baking sheet too. Baking sheets that are lighter in color will might need more time if you want it to be more brown, and sheets that are darker in color will maybe brown a lot, maybe give you that crisp a lot faster. I forgot to do this. Okay. All right, I'll give you a little goo. Maybe the nicest one. I'm trying to pick. I think this one would be good. So this is pretty gooey, but here's the shot. Actually, I'll do it over here so you can see. Oh yeah, this is quite gooey, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm gonna give it a bite.
And while you give your cookie a bite, I'd love to hear from the attendees. Feel free to add in the chat if any of your cookies are ready. Let us know. Also, I want to draw all of your attention to a question that Stephen added to the chat. Anyone who has an answer for him, feel free to add that. He's asking if anyone knows of a good home kneading machine that can handle very stiff dough, stiffer than can be handled by a Hobart. So if anyone has any expertise in that area, please share it with Stephen in the chat. I know our cookies are in the oven, but probably need a couple more minutes.
Okay. And sorry, what was the question in the chat about? A
Hobart machine. Stephen is asking for a home kneading machine that can handle a stiffer dough.
Huh.
And, we're getting some suggestions. A KitchenAid stand mixer has a dough hook. All right. I don't know. Do you use a home kneading machine? Therese?
Oh, home kneading. I heard home kneading, and I thought, wow, someone's making fermented honey wine. That's so cool.
Oh.
Her home kneading. Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
No, it just didn't register to me. I use my KitchenAid and I use a dough hook. I don't have a dough hook on it, but you can purchase a dough hook, and the KitchenAid does a pretty good job, I would say. I think it's especially if you have one of the really big KitchenAids. I think this is a 6-quart. There's like ones that even go 8 or 10 quarts, and those are the ones where it doesn't have a hinge, but it has like a swivel or not a swivel, you have a lever and it pushes it up. Those are like very hardcore heavy duty that you could probably have even more kneading power than this guy here. But there could be other kneading machines too that are just only solely used for kneading doughs for breads. I haven't delved into the realm of baking breads. I'm a little intimidated.
Therese, if we want to freeze the cookies to bake them later, or the dough, right, to bake it later, can we put them straight into the oven, or do we need to thaw the dough first?
No, you can put them straight to the oven. I would say, depending on your oven temperature, the pan you use, adjust the time you bake it accordingly. So maybe instead of 9 minutes, do 10 or 11 because it's frozen. Yeah.
Great, good. Well, we're up at the end of our workshop. Let me see if there are any other questions. Anyone of the attendees who have a final question? And otherwise, if any questions come up afterwards, feel free to email us and we'll pass them on to Therese.
Also, before heading out, I don't know if she's watching at the moment, but it is one of my friends, a SWAT alum as well, as birthday. Her name's Ali Nagunama. So if you know her or if she's watching, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Yes, it's great. Good. Thank you. And we're getting a lot of thank yous. Thank you. This was fun.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. I hope you enjoy your cookies. I'm sorry for the one person whose chocolate chips melted. And yeah, good luck. Happy baking.
All right. Thank you, Therese.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
having me.
Good night.
Good night.